Welcome. I am Brett L. Pape. That is Alex Johnson. And this is the Coach Approach. Alex, thank you so much for filling in. Coach Bruce couldn't be here this week. He's traveling across the country with his family, and you were so kind to come in. And I know Coach Bruce and I have been very thankful for the opportunity you gave us 3 years ago to move our show over here. So now I'm very thankful that you were able to come on with us or with me. So thank you, Alex.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Got pretty big shoes to fill tonight, but I think we'll have a good show.
Well, literally, because I think he's like 6'5", so he's a big man. So,
Yeah.
But I'm sure you'll do great. Before we get into a typical show, let's talk a little bit about you and what you've been able to do over at Yards Per. You got a website, yardsperfantasy.com. You provide dynasty rankings, rookie rankings, redraft rankings. Have a great 2024 rookie guide on there, articles that you can read at any time. And I know, being a consumer of a lot of content, it gets difficult to find a site that you're not having to pay for. So if you have not found a site that you trust, I'm telling you, Alex Johnson's Yards Per is a place that you can go and find everything you need. The week rankings already are up. They were actually up on Monday. So love the site. And I guess, how did you get it going? How does one just decide that they're going to go from a fantasy player to a fantasy analyst and put out a site?
That's a good question. I don't know. I started this 5 years ago. I had the idea for it about 6 years ago. Hired a guy to build a website and just gave it a shot. I mean, I'm not, a professional writer. I'm not a web developer, but I wrote for a few sites, over the years, just little side stuff here and there. And I was like, you know what? I just want to see what I could do, if I could do it myself and kind of let my vision go and kind of put it all together. And it's been fun. I mean, we've built a nice team here. A lot of people come and go over the years, but I definitely couldn't do this without everybody who's come and contributed to our website or our YouTube channel over the years, in one way or another. So I'm very thankful for the team that we have. And, it's a lot of fun. And I'm definitely very thankful for the audience as well. YouTube has grown a ton. The website traffic goes up massively every year. So it's a lot of fun, and I appreciate everybody who's involved.
It's funny, you started off telling me about the site by saying you wanted to know if you can do it. And I think the answer at this point is yes, you can, and you do it quite well. So once again, thank you for letting us be a part of your company. Let's tell us about the other podcasts or the other times. I know with the Coach Approach, Coach Bruce and I plan on being here Wednesday nights and then having our Sunday morning shows, which would go on at 8:30 Pacific time every Sunday. But what else is on the network?
Yeah, so in addition to the Coach Approach, every week I'm going to be putting out a weekly video that's buys and sells during the season. Just some, a handful of players that I'm targeting in trade. I think you should be targeting in trade that maybe aren't the most obvious at that moment. And same, guys who maybe have had a good couple of weeks that I don't think that's sustainable, and I'm putting them on the trade block and I'm selling. And of course, I'm going to tell you exactly why, because I want you to be able to, if you don't agree with me, at least, you kind of understand my thought process. And then Saturday nights, it won't be every Saturday night, but as many as I can get in. Saturday nights, I'm going to be doing a news-based show. It's kind of a new format for me, so we're going to try it out. I've kind of played with different formats for Saturday night shows over the last couple of years, so I'm going to try something new this year. I'm going to go over, just the top stories heading into Sunday, the injury report, go over the relevant injuries for the week, and kind of give you some other nuggets, stats and stuff that I'm paying attention to heading into Sunday. And then Sunday morning, I'm going to sit here and you guys are just going to ask me a ton of questions, and I'm going to answer start, sit, and all the way up to kickoff. It's going to be a lot of fun.
There you go. And if you don't want to wait, you can go to his website right now. Again, his weekly rankings are already up there. So they're always there and I'll go ahead and post the link to the site and post that here in a little bit. But let's get on to kind of like what you talk about on your Saturday show. And this is the part of the show. It's usually my least favorite because of the time when we're talking about injuries, and that's our
Right.
news, injuries, and storylines going into week one. And fortunately, it being week one, it's not as bad as it typically can be. You know, last year, week two, we came out the gate swinging with guys like, you know, Aaron Rodgers and so forth being hurt right off the bat. So fortunately, we're not going to get into that. But I'll tell you, I did get a little kick to the stomach today, seeing that there was an issue with Kyle Pitts. And if you've been a fan of Kyle Pitts, or if you bought the hype coming out of University of Florida, you invested heavy draft capital. This was supposed to be the year. We were finally going to get him to see him with a competent quarterback and maybe a competent coach, because obviously Arthur Smith took a lot of grief over how he kind of managed the offense as a whole over the last few years. Those days are over, and yet, you know, we kind of got to deal with this. But doesn't seem like Raheem Morris is all that worried about it, and we should get a Kyle Pitts week one. Thoughts on Kyle Pitts this year? Thoughts on what it means as far as where do you see him ending up as a tight end for the year?
Yeah, up until this year, I've never really been like a Kyle Pitts guy. I've always kind of faded Kyle Pitts, and it's worked out well for me so far. But this year I've been on board. I think for the first time, he's kind of properly priced in drafts. I think, you know, obviously with the quarterback upgrade, the offensive coordinator upgrade, it's just everything is aligning for Kyle Pitts to happen this year until he gets hurt heading into week one. But I still feel good about it as long as this is a minor injury. There's nothing that's going to linger into week one and beyond. I feel good about Kyle Pitts this year. I think if it's ever going to happen, it has to happen now.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, you always want them to have the perfect situation when they get drafted. You know, kind of like, I know you're real high on Trey Benson. When I saw Trey Benson go to go to Arizona Cardinals, at first, like, well, I guess he's going to get a redshirt year. But what I'm getting at is that you never know what situation these great athletes are going to get into. And he obviously wasn't in a good situation the first 2 years. Hopefully that'll change this year. Moving on to the next note, and I kind of wanted to bring this up. You know, I've talked about on the show in the past mental health and how you should always put that above everything else. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire with the Kansas City Chiefs has been placed on the NFL's NFI list. Won't play the first 4 weeks. Hope that whatever issue, I've read about it. If you want to look into it, you can find out kind of what he's going through. But hopefully he'll get some things taken care of and he can, you know, have a little peace. But with that, the Chiefs went out and hired. They signed Samaje Perine last week after he was cut by the Broncos. And Perine already is listed as the number 2 back. I saw a lot of people getting worried. If you're an Isaiah Pacheco kind of manager, a little worried about that signing. But then I saw other people, if you're worried about them signing a guy who was just cut, how confident were you in, you know, him anyway? So, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll knock down Isaiah Pacheco slightly. I've been an Isaiah Pacheco guy since he came out of Rutgers as a 7th-round pick. I was banging the drum for him in his rookie training camp. So I feel like a proud dad watching Isaiah Pacheco go out there and do the things that he's done. So I've ranked him pretty highly to begin with. I do think Samaje Perine does hurt him a little bit, not dramatically. I don't think he's going to hurt him maybe as badly as like a Jerick McKinnon has over the last couple of years. Because I think Isaiah Pacheco, he's worked all offseason to be that 3-down, full-blown bell cow, to be able to bring more value to the passing game. I don't think that's just going to go away because they signed Samaje Perine. Some of it will, unfortunately. We've listened to some of the beat reporters from Kansas City. They do believe that Perine is going to be involved at least a bit on 3rd downs, maybe even down in the red zone. And of course, those are the valuable opportunities, the valuable situations for us in fantasy. So I'll knock him down, you know, maybe half a round in my rankings, but otherwise I was already probably higher than consensus on him anyway. So I'm still drafting Pacheco. I still feel really good about my Pacheco shares.
It's funny that you bring up that you were really high on him, because I remember that. And ironically, I draft him in my home league. And what I tend to do is guys that are drafted in the 7th round in the NFL draft, or a guy like Elijah Mitchell, who was drafted in the 5th round, and they come out and they show signs right away of possibly being something. man, I am going to put them on the block as quick as possible and see what someone's going to give me for that, because outliers are not all that common. I will say for running backs, late round running backs tend to hit more often, but he is one guy. I didn't mind giving up. I gave up Elijah Mitchell after his rookie year for a first round pick. Didn't mind that one.
Wow.
The Pacheco one has hurt me the last couple of years. I always talk to that owner. Hey, you still got to thank me for that. Still got to thank me for that one.
Yeah,
right,
I just got a DM the other day. A guy was asking me a question about what he should do in a trade or something. And he was like, I trust you. You turned me on to Pacheco. So he still remembers that from
there you
years
go.
ago.
There you go. I still remember a guy who came out, and I have him bookmarked, so I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he came out with James Robinson prior to the rookie year. He said, hey, the best undrafted guy you need to go get is him. And every year to this day, I still go, hey, you got any undrafted running backs I should look out for? And just so you know, he did. It was the can't remember, Jawan Jordan with the Texans.
Okay.
So he's obviously now on the IR, so don't go out and run and do anything with that. But nevertheless, moving on to the next one, and we did get some good news. At least I just read that Jamar Chase was back at practice fully. He said he's good to go, so we can take that line off, where we were going to spend time talking about that. But I did ask about T. Higgins, and what I want to know about that is I don't think he's coming back next year with them. So with that being said, what type of year do you expect out of him, with it being a contract, somewhat of a prove-it year for him?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely saw a step back from T. Higgins last year. I kind of expect something between that and what he had given us in his previous first couple of years. I think he's a solid, mid to low wide receiver too. Okay. He's going to be a little bit more valuable here early in the season because he's been there throughout training camp, throughout preseason, and Jamar Chase hasn't. But I mean, he's not somebody that I am super targeting like during the summer and drafts. But I mean, he's a solid play.
All right, let's move on to the next one, and that was Jaylen Warren. Fortunately, all these guys we're going to be mentioning seem like they're good to go. And so Jaylen Warren struggled, or I shouldn't say struggled, but suffered hamstring kind of issue, but he is expected to play. He's been out. He hasn't played in a preseason game since week 2. Expect him to play. That's a tough backfield each week to kind of judge when you got a Najee Harris and him, and now we've got Arthur Smith. And a lot of people are calling for a Jaylen Warren breakout year where he kind of takes it away from Najee. What do you expect? I think it's going to kind of be more of the same, but maybe a little more volume.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think there's going to be enough volume for both of these guys to eat this year. So I've been drafting both of them. Now, obviously, missing the last few weeks because of the hamstring injury coming into the season definitely is going to hurt Jaylen Warren early in the season. And hopefully it's not something that lingers. Hopefully it's not something that he re-aggravates, because we definitely see hamstring injuries can definitely be re-aggravated pretty easily if they don't let them get themselves to 100%. But Jaylen Warren said he's between 98 and 100% ready to go. So I'm going to trust him on that. I'm probably not playing him in week 1. Najee's going to eat a ton, I think, in week 1. But after that, I feel good about my Jaylen Warren shares.
All right. Before we get to our next one, we got our first question. This is from Dan. Dan, how are you doing back there in Ohio? Question is, when do you think we will see Hockenson playing? Got him on an IR in a couple weeks. I don't think this is going to be a 4-week injury. I kind of think we're looking more at maybe 6 to 8 weeks, especially. I guess it also depends on how things are going with Sam Darnold, but I think it's going to be longer than 4 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he tore it pretty late in the year, and I think he had to wait a little while for swelling and stuff to go down before he could even have the surgery. So I think we're looking at like a January surgery. And then you got a new quarterback, Sam Darnold. It's definitely going to be, especially if they're not winning a bunch of games, they're not going to rush him back. And even when he gets back, it's going to take a little while for him to be ramped up fully. I'm thinking realistically, he's probably not going into your starting lineup until the earliest week 10.
Kind of agree with that. So Dan, if you can keep him on IR all the way until then, go for it. But if he's taking a roster spot, and I think Dan's mostly a redraft guy, if he's taking a roster spot, I would not feel uncomfortable about just cutting him.
And what I would do, because I don't feel super confident that he's going to be the usual TJ Hawkinson when he does come back, at least not until 2025. When that news comes back that he's practicing, that he's going to play, I'm putting him on my trade block and seeing what I can get for him.
There you go. So thank you, Dan, as always. Hope all is well. All right, next is Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs, again, another kind of soft tissue injury, expected to play this week, thankfully. And what I'm going to ask about him is the last few days, a lot of people have been talking about possibly a 2,000-yard scrimmage type of season for him. Do you expect him to I see you shaking your head. Well, what do you expect to see out of him this year then?
Not 2,000 yards. That's not going to happen. I mean, David Montgomery is still going to lead this team in carries, is my expectation. I think we'll get essentially what we got in the second half last year from Jahmyr Gibbs. Maybe the dials turned up on that a little bit. But I think they're definitely going to still involve David Montgomery quite heavily. He's going to take a lot of that in between the 20s work, in between the tackles work. Just all that hard, gross stuff that they don't need Jahmyr Gibbs out there for. Which does leave the valuable touches for Jahmyr Gibbs. But 2,000 yards from scrimmage, I think that's a little bit of a stretch.
As a Jahmyr Gibbs manager in my home league, I would be happy with him just doing everything he did the last 8 weeks, but do it for 17 weeks.
Right.
Kind of like what you were talking about. Just maintain that. There we go. Next one. This one is an injury. We've known about it. Hollywood Brown is out this week. Last week, the Chiefs signed Juju Smith-Schuster. They also have the first-round pick in Xavier Worthy, obviously Rashee Rice. With Hollywood Brown, do you see – I heard people talking about Juju today on the fantasy radio station. I guess that's on DirecTV or not Direct, whatever. I heard it on the radio today that they expect him to possibly have any type of role. I didn't see much of anything in that of last year, but – with Hollywood out, are we going to see a Xavier? Do you think Worthy is going to make splash plays? Is he going to be someone that we could start week one?
Yeah, I do. I don't have him super highly ranked for week one because there's definitely some risk with him being, a rookie. But he's flashed in training camp. He's going to have a role in week one. I think he's a guy who at Texas, he broke freshman records. He came out, burst on the scene from day one in college. I think he can do maybe not to that degree in the NFL, but he's going to be ready to go. He's going to perform and produce right away. Like I said, maybe not week one necessarily. Maybe you can get a long touchdown. I don't expect a lot of volume, but throughout the season, I do expect, kind of like a roller coaster type player from Xavier Worthy. He's going to give you some of those week winning performances, but he's also going to give you some weeks where he's just like, nowhere to be found.
So year one, better best ball type of guy.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
All right, last bit of injuries, and these are all good news. Devontae Adams, Sam Laporta, Tyreek Hill, all guys, Jalen Waddle, all guys that have been kind of bumped and bruised a little bit, but are expected to play week one. Let's get in our next thing. Usually I throw things at Coach Bruce, and he's got to try and figure out the best way to respond. So let's do the same thing to you. We're going to put Alex on the hot seat. First question, I saw a tweet from you a few days ago. You were talking about there are 3 quarterbacks that you feel like could end up being quarterback one that are not Josh Allen, not Jalen Hurts, not Lamar Jackson, or not Patrick Mahomes. Who are those 3? Did I lose you, Alex? All right, Alex has had a little bit of an issue with his internet prior to this show starting, so we will continue to go with this. The 3 that I would assume that he's going with, because I have not read the rest of that tweet because I wanted to find out tonight on the show. But if I were a guess, I think he's looking at guys like a CJ Stroud, who I know have a lot of people high up, are real high on him. I think a Kyler Murray might be someone. Kyler Murray came back from the injury last year and did rather well late. And then what you got is now you've added Marvin Harrison Jr. to that offense with a Trey McBride who really flashed in his rookie year. So I really like Kyler Murray. And the third one is I'm of opinion that we're going to see a lot more out of JD Daniels than we expect. Now, quarterback one, probably not, but he's someone that I have become really high on. And I'm curious to see if we get Alex back, who his three quarterbacks are that would fill in or for either one of those top four. Next one, we're just going to kind of move down. We'll get back to Alex on the hot seat again if we get him back. We're going to go ahead and move on to Thursday night football. Football is actually back. We've got one more night of sleep, and we get to see the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs tomorrow night on prime time. Baltimore, obviously, both teams are 0-0. Kansas City, minus 3.5 favorites, playing at home. Over and under, I kind of wanted to see a little bit of a higher number, obviously, as a fantasy guy, and two offenses that everyone's going to be pretty highly invested in with the type of skill players they have. So you'd like to see the over and under pretty kind of bumped up a little bit, but it is 46.5. So you're looking at possibly 23 points each. Hopefully it's a little bit higher. Predictions, I like Baltimore tomorrow. I like Baltimore winning 27-24. Don't know. Obviously, everyone talks about this is the rule or this is the week one is always kind of a week you just don't know what's going to happen. But I feel like Baltimore is going to win 27-24, so that's what I'm going with. Alex obviously is not here, so we're not going to get his prediction. But I know that I'm pretty sure he said the Ravens. I don't have his because we don't like to share prior. Now let's go ahead and get in start and sits. Now this team, both these teams, real easy start sits for them both because, again, their skill guys are about as good as any offenses in the league. For Baltimore, I love starting Lamar Jackson. Don't know how you can't. Quarterback 3, any league, any format, obviously starting. Derrick Henry, Lamar this week on the yards per website, he is the quarterback 3 of the week. And if you don't know what the weekly rankings are, they go through the matchups, they look at the defenses, they look at the tendencies, they look at past experience against those teams, and that's how they're broken down. So Lamar Jackson, quarterback 3, obvious start. Derrick Henry, obviously he's coming over from the Tennessee Titans. He gets to get in that backfield. And obviously everyone's excited about what Derrick Henry is going to bring to that offense. He is running back 6 for the week, and he is going to be someone you're going to have in your lineup. Moving down, let's move down to wide receivers. And if you're in a super flex and you have multiple flex items, I love starting Zay Flowers. He's wide receiver 28. What he did the last 5 to 6 weeks of the season, he showed me that he is going to be their wide receiver 1. So Zay Flowers in a deep type of starting lineup, I like starting Zay Flowers. And you move on to tight end, Mark Andrews, tight end 5 for the week, was on track to be tight end 1 for the year last year prior to the injury. So Mark Andrews, tight end 5 for the week. I'm very comfortable with starting him, obviously. Let's get Alex back on the stage. Alex, how are you?
I'm good. The internet sucks here.
Yeah, no worries. I'm used to it. I've done it plenty of times with Coach Bruce. We stopped with putting you on the hot seat. We can go back to it. I jumped into the Baltimore Kansas City game. I gave my prediction. I think you kind of told me prior that you were leaning Ravens. If you were not, or tell me who you're going for in this one.
Yeah, so I have the Ravens winning this one. Actually, no, I apologize. I have the Chiefs winning this one.
There we go. Okay.
27-23 is my predicted score for them.
And then from there, we went over the Baltimore starts, talked about Lamar Jackson being quarterback 3 on your website for the week. Obviously, if you have Lamar Jackson, you're starting him in any format. Derrick Henry, running back 6, same thing. Mark Andrews, tight end 5, same thing. Zay Flowers, this is where a little tricky, wide receiver 28 on the week. But if you're in super flexes and you've got multiple flex spots, or you're in leagues where you're starting 3 wide receivers, then I have no issue with starting Zay Flowers this week.
Absolutely.
And Baltimore sits. I know it's weird. You got a lot of people excited about Rashad Bateman again and talking about, that new stat that everyone's talking about, the ass stat, and average separation. So, and they're talking about really excited about Rashad Bateman, but you have him at wide receiver 61. For me, obviously, you're not starting him unless you have an awful team. But he's obviously, if people are high on him, he came out with great analytics out of the University of Minnesota. So hopefully he can turn things around and stay healthy and give you something a little more than what we've gotten so far. Moving
Yeah.
on to Kansas City starts, another team. I mean, these are teams tonight that we're talking about. Actually, all 4 teams in these 2 games, you're pretty much, if you've got a guy that is not a backup, you're probably starting him. Kansas City, you got Patrick Mahomes, quarterback 6. Where he's dropped is his lack of running, or the guys that do run kind of catapulted him in rankings for quarterbacks. And because 2 or 3 years ago, he was quarterback 1, no questions asked. No one thought that would ever change with the way he was going.
Yeah, I think if you just look at the guys ahead of him, it's Josh Allen, it's Jalen Hurts, it's Lamar Jackson. These guys their games are very, very built around them running, and they can throw at a high level as well. Where, Mahomes can run, and he does run, which is why he's the number 4, and he's the better passer of the 4. But that running value it's just too valuable. And then I think some of it kind of lingers over from last year as well. The weapons weren't there. He will have improved weaponry this year, and I think that will at least give him a chance to get back to that QB1 status at some point this year.
He's still playing this week in anybody's lineup without a doubt.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, moving on. Isaiah Pacheco, you have him this week as your running back 7. Again, most leagues you got to start at least 2. So there's a guy that you're for sure starting. Rashee Rice, got a couple questions. He dropped in value, obviously, because nobody knew exactly what was going to happen with him. We still kind of don't know. If you follow the Twitter lawyer Davenport, who, if you don't follow him, I can't remember his handle, but that guy does a great job just breaking down exactly what these NFL players are going through or what we can expect when it comes to legal issues. He's a must follow. But anyways, Rashee Rice, wide receiver 22. Again, we talk about super flexes, even 2 wide receiver leagues. This is the guy you're going to start.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it took him a while to get ramped up last year as a rookie, which can't be surprising, new guy in the league and everything. But late in the year, down the stretch, he was a wide receiver 1, and I think he's going to pick up right where he left off. Obviously, the off-field issues dropped him in ADP and in rankings for draft season, but now that we're pretty much in the clear, he's not going to be suspended at all this year. He's full go. He's a guy who, if it wasn't for all that, he would have been drafted in the 2nd, 3rd round at worst this year as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1 even. So I'm going to start him as 1.
I like him a lot. And you watch that Miami playoff game and what he was able to do in negative 12 degrees. I mean, that was a pretty impressive performance. So I expect him to only grow. And then lastly for them as starts is you got Travis Kelce, tight end 3. I mean, congratulations if you've had that guy on your team because he's been a Hall of Famer. Sits for me for Kansas City. I only have 1. I'm not even worried about a Juju Smith-Schuster, Nicole Hardman, or anybody else.
Yeah.
One thing I want to go back on in a minute, though, Xavier Worthy, wide receiver 38. If you're in a deep super flex league, yeah, you can play him, but I would sit him if I didn't have to play him. But we talked about Pirine a little bit earlier and talked about whether or not that hurt Pacheco. The guy that I think it hurts the most is the rookie a lot of people were getting excited about, and that's Carson Steele. What Carson was able to do running the ball the last few weeks kind of gave you the impression he was going to be the RB2. They pulled the trade, make the trade. Now, I don't expect much from Carson this year.
No, he was a big, sleeper there for about two or 3 weeks during the summer. I think Samaje Perine come along and kind of wash our hands of Carson Steele, at least for now. But just keep him in the back of your head, keep him in the back of your mind. If anything happens to Samaje Perine, if anything happens to Isaiah Pacheco, I mean, this guy was hyped all summer, from people who were there watching Chiefs training camp. And I mean, we've seen crazier things happen than a guy out of nowhere come out and perform in the Chiefs offense. So definitely a guy to keep in the back of your mind. But for right now, he's off the radar.
Perfect guy if you're in a super flex dynasty league. Perfect taxi guy.
Yeah.
All right, Green Bay. This is one, obviously, as a Green Bay fan, pretty excited about, but more importantly, as a fantasy. But we're being blessed to have two great fantasy type offenses right out of the gate, or two games with them. And that's Green Bay versus Philadelphia in Brazil. The Brazil part, I haven't been a big fan of it, knowing, I mean, early on, we read things in the summer that they can't even wear their green uniforms to the stadium because of issues that might arise. And but regardless, that's what we get. It's going to be on Peacock. Philadelphia minus 2.5 favorite, over and under 48.5. I think that's kind of low. I don't know about you. I would bet on that. I feel like you got two new defensive coordinators on defenses that both struggled last year. So I kind of think the 48.5 might be a little bit low. Predictions, I would be, kicked out of my family if I didn't pick Green Bay. So I got Green Bay 31, Eagles 24. How do you see it? I think we might have lost him again. So, there we go. Yeah, we definitely lost Alex again. So I'll fly solo. I do know that he agreed with me. He was with me on the Packers. So we both like the Packers. Before we get into starting sits, let's go back over to Dan. Dan, Jordan Love or Dak this week? While I'm looking that up, Dak Prescott, obviously Dak became a lot better when we got CeeDee Lamb back. So that is something that, give me a second, Dan. I'm looking it up. I can't find it. It is Jordan Love. I got Jordan Love this week. We've got Dallas at Cleveland, obviously Cleveland and what they did last year on the defense side of the ball. So it's Jordan Love for me, Dan. And for those of you I didn't post it, there's the question. All right, moving on. Green Bay start and sits. Green Bay first, Jordan Love, quarterback 9. Obviously in Superflex, you're starting him. One back quarterback leagues. If you do not have a better quarterback, a guy ranked 1 through 8, Jordan Love's a start. Josh Jacobs, running back 10, another start for me. And then Jayden Reed. This is where it gets kind of touchy with the Green Bay offense, and that is everyone has talked about the fact that they do not have a true number 1 wide receiver. They just have 4 or 5 guys that can be a wide receiver 1 on any given week. So I do have Jayden Reed as a start, wide receiver 34. So he's not a must start. He's a start if you have a deep super flex and you've got a few flex spots to fill. Green Bay sits. This is where, I may get a little egg on my face, but Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, Luke Musgrave, and Tucker Kraft all sits for me this week. However, each and every one of them could absolutely flash and have a big week. Tough offense to read because you just don't know what one of them is going to do each week. Moving on, Philadelphia starts is another team where I don't have any sits for them. The only sits that you're going to have for them are backup guys. But if you're looking at Jalen Hurts, quarterback 2, must start. Saquon Barkley, running back 5, must start. A.J. Brown, wide receiver 5, must start. Devontae Smith, wide receiver 18, must start. Dallas Goedert. Now, Dallas Goedert, if you're in a 1 tight end type of situation, if you got a better guy than this week's tight end 11 and Dallas Goedert, no problem with you not starting him. But great offense, great fantasy players, great games that we're going to be able to watch. So with Alex not here, that's going to be the end of it. It's going to be a quick show. I will say if there's any start-sit questions, Alex does have a start-sit show Sunday mornings. It will be on at 9:30 Pacific time. That's 12:30 on the East Coast. But just make it easy on you. 30 minutes prior to the opening kickoff, you're going to have a start-sit show with Alex. Coach Approach will not have one this week as Coach is still out of town, but we'll be back next Wednesday. For all of you, I hope you guys get lots of touchdowns, get lots of wins, especially in the home league. Best of luck, and thank you so much for tuning in.